Time for us to take a look at the dailies on Daybreak, have a sense of what the front pages are saying about growth in the country. The first paper, Daily Trust newspaper, has a lead story talking about the 2024 budget. It says, experts set agenda for government as Tinubu signs 2024 budget. NECA urges fiscal discipline. LCCI wants action on inflation, social inequality. Nigerians seek quick relief from hardship. PDP demands account of earnings. LP folds president's speech. All the details on page 4. Now, an infograph there shows you a breakdown of the 2024 budget. I'd like for the team to perhaps zoom the front page of the Daily Trust there so that you can see the figures there on the infograph. It's worthy of note some of the key assumptions of the 2024 budget. So it puts the budget deficit at 19.18 trillion naira. You also have a capital expenditure of 9.99 trillion naira, as well as a 1.74 trillion naira for statutory transfers, 8.27 trillion naira for debt servicing, 8.76 trillion naira as recurrent expenditure. So the government is also expecting the exchange rate to be 800 naira to the dollar. As one of the assumptions, daily oil production is put at 1.78 million barrels per day. You have oil benchmark price of $77.96. GDP growth rate at 3.88%. Now, the statutory transfers are some of the issues that are generating controversy. Over 1 trillion naira has been budgeted for that. You have agencies such as, or I would say government institutions as National Judicial Council, Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, Universal Basic Education Commission, UBEC, Northeast Development Commission, NEDC, Basic Health Care Provision Fund, National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, Public Complaints Commission, and the National Human Rights Commission. These are some of the agencies that will be gulping over 1 trillion naira in the 2024 budget. And then the security agencies are taking, I would say, a chunk of the 2024 budget, beginning with the defense, which has 1.308 trillion naira. If you look at the Office of the National Security Advisor, it also has 199.76 billion naira. The Ministry of Interior, 362.55 billion naira. Put together, you have over 3 trillion naira budgeted for security purposes in Nigeria. So that's just a brief, overview of the 2024 budget. You have other stories above the lead story, where you have issues that shaped the 10th National Assembly in 2023, a sort of a review of that, of the year 2023. Dangote Refinery receives 4th crude shipment. On page 19, you find the details there. Recall that the Dangote Refinery gave a target to begin, selling fuel or PMS by earlier it was around August that we were promised. We're in December, and so, we'll continue to follow up with all that.
In January.
Yes. Other stories there. Rivers politics, they are fighting me because of my red biro, says Fubara. You'll find that on page 10. That's Fubara, the Rivers State Governor. Below the infographs of the 2024 budget, you have Super Eagles AFCON camp opens today in Abu Dhabi. And then the bottom there, Kano Emir's son joins Oba of Benin in crossover church service on page 28. You have Plateau killings. Pope Francis consoles Nigeria, prays for victims' families on page 28. 100,000 displaced as earthquake hits Japan. So that's on page 28. These are the main stories on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper today.
All right, let's move on to the Nation newspaper this morning. from the top of the page there, it says, analysts project average Naira exchange of 919 Naira per dollar and equities return to 14.8%. 163,878 travelers benefit from transportation fare rebate in 10 days in Nigeria. That is based on what the federal government did, 50% of transport fares. Why my detractors are unrelenting by Fubara. Nova merchant to begin commercial banking. Below the headmaster, we have Dangote Refinery gets fourth crude consignment. Plateau killings, a genocide, a very sad one. We've seen the governor, Caleb Mutwang, give the 1st to the 8th of January for mourning in the memory and honor of the late PDP, LP in battle over opposition role. LP lacks the basis to reclaim or to claim top spot. Now, perform on budget or get sacked. President Tinubu warns. This is the major story on the Nation newspaper this morning. There is no room for poor performance, he said. MDAs to provide monthly budget performance report. 28.78 trillion naira 2024 Appropriation Act to run concurrently with 2023 extra budget. Well, there's a lot of question on that one. Governors, clerics raise hope in New Year messages. And First Lady visits Zach Orji, the actor who has, a video of him going viral of him in the hospital, in a very bad condition. Now, these are some of the stories on the Nation front page today.
All right. Now let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper, where you have the lead story. It says, deficit execution concerns over expanded 28.8 trillion naira budget. You have Huriwa queries promotion of generals amid insecurity. FG not committed to agreements with Labour. NLC claims. Nigerian startups borrow $415 million in 10 years as equity funding falters. You have also Fubara vows to retain Rivers governorship mandate. Monarch writes Tinubu over 3,050 megawatts Mambila hydropower dispute. PDP, others fault Tinubu's pledges, demand concrete actions against hardship. Ondo polls, Aiyedatiwa warns politicians against acts of violence. Calumny. You also have New Year, 44 inmates get amnesty in Taraba and Nasarawa. These are the main stories on the Guardian newspaper.
Let's move to the Vanguard newspaper. The lead story here says Plateau attacks, groups slam COAS on why Nigerians can't bear the arms. There's a lot of story on that one. You can check page 5 of the newspaper. Below there, we see 3,050 megawatt. Emir asks Tinubu to wade into Mambila power disputes. Nigeria too important to be left in hands of transactional politicians. That's according to Peter Obi, the 2023 presidential candidate of LP. 2024 APC mom as PDP LP dismissed Tinubu's address as hollow. The truth about Biafra and its so-called indigenous people. Readers' right to respond. You find that deep story on page 27. Above the headmaster, it says Dangote Refinery gets 4th shipment of crude and 5th underway. Plateau, God free Nigerian from those horrors that praise Pope Francis. Tinubu signs 2024 budget of 28.78 trillion naira into law, and there is justification in the 1.28 trillion naira increase in the budget. That's according to the Senate President Akpabio. Now, these are some of the stories on the Vanguard newspaper today.
All right. Now, let's take a look at the...
All right, now would be joined via Zoom our reviewer of today, who is Dr. Theophilus Abba, the Program Director of Daily Trust Foundation. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning, Doctor.
Good morning, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year, Doctor. Okay, let's start by hearing your own thoughts on the 2024 budget. I mean, we saw the front page of the Daily Trust, breaking down every details of how the money would be used. Would you say that you are okay with this budget, and would Nigerians truly benefit from this budget?
Well, the budget, as we know, I think has been signed by the president, so it has become a legal document, and which ought to be implemented. Um, if the budget is implemented to the letter, it should it should improve the economy, and a lot of changes should take place in Nigeria. But the experience we've had over the years has been that when these budgets are signed into law, maybe the revenue expectation may not be realized. For instance, I think if the deficit is about 19 trillion, they were expecting that about 9 trillion will be the revenue from maybe internally generated, maybe from export and internally generated revenue. But then I don't know what it was, but I don't think last year, that is 2023, we generated up to 10 trillion. If we didn't generate 10 trillion, because I know FIRS generated some amount, the custom generated something, then we got something from the sale of oil. But I don't think in all it was up to 10 trillion. So we want to find out what exactly government is going to put in place to show up the revenue generation. Then the debt servicing is quite high. Debt servicing is quite high. That means that, I mean, a good percentage of the amount of money that we are going to earn will be used to service our debts, and then we are going to acquire more debt. I've been hearing 19 trillion as a deficit. That means that government is going to borrow money, maybe from World Bank, maybe from other multilateral organizations, or maybe from the stock market and things like that. A lot of money is going to be borrowed. So, to me, it's not actually even the figure that matters, but the implementation. Because over the years, we have discovered that when these funds are budgeted, most times they are not released on time, well on time for the project to be implemented. And even when some of these funds are released, we note that the implementation may not be up to the percentage that we expect. For instance, if a road is supposed to be constructed and the funds are released maybe towards September, October, towards the end of the year, so that should be completed in 6 months, 7 months, cannot be completed in 2 months. So you see a lot of projects being rolled over. So there are a lot of questions about even implementing.
Dr. Theophilus, are you with us? I think there seems to be a network issue on that one. There is one question I want to ask Doctor, and it's on the debt service that he mentioned about, the chunk where he said it's a lot, about 27 trillion naira.
Releasing the funds for budget implementation, things like that. So it dealt with, because it's good that
we're adding 1.2 trillion naira to the budget, and there is already a chunk load of debt that we need to pay. Then how are we able to solve this issue? Okay, so we have Dr. Theophilus back with us. Doctor, talking about the budget and the debt service, are you not concerned about the additional 1.2 trillion naira? And would you say that the reason that the president gave for the increase is justified, because he made mention of the inflation rate, and we still have a chunk load of money to pay back? And definitely, we know that we're going to use a large number of another borrowed or loan fund in order to, make it to sponsor this 2024 budget.
Well, the inflation rate has been quite high. 28% is quite high. And we expect that the CBN should do something about it. Because we can't allow this floating of the prices of things and call it market determination. It's too much. Because I don't think any country can really balance its account when you have that kind of inflation, because it means that a lot of things are not predictable. Actually, in the the 1st January speech, I didn't hear the president talk about how they would deal with the inflation. And so when I now see an additional, budget, saying because of the inflation, it means that it's most likely that not much will be done. Because if you don't deal with the inflation, it means we will keep, having, this shock. You enter into the market, you bought something today, the next day the price is gone up. Government must take deliberate steps to deal with inflation. I don't know. They are the experts. They know a whole lot of things about how to deal with this inflation. But the cost of drugs are going up. The cost of foodstuffs are going. Food inflation is very high. And if the president is increasing the budget because of food inflation, because of inflation, then it should go. The CBN must do something about inflation, because it is the role of the CBN to control inflation.
Okay.
So it's under their control. It's under their control. They must take, even if it's going to be a political step that must be taken, they have to take that step to deal with inflation. But this case of borrowing and borrowing and borrowing without maybe restriction, and the National Assembly not even say no to all these requests for borrowing, I don't think it's good for Nigeria, because we have not seen the benefits of what we have been borrowing over the years.
Okay, Doctor, other concerns raised about the budget, and I've highlighted this with our earlier guest on the show, is about the issue of transparency and accountability. We are talking about close to 6 trillion naira that cannot be accounted for in this past budget. When you look at the statutory transfer of 1.754 trillion naira, and you also look at the statewide votes that has been budgeted for over 4 trillion naira, about 16% of the 2024 budget in this budget, close to 6 trillion naira. There is no explanation as to the breakdown of what goes to where, for that. How do we keep track of, the spendings and the management of those funds?
Well, when you talk about statutory transfers, like if it goes to the basic health fund, universal basic education, National Judicial Council, and all this, I think those ones are well spelled out. You have to release these funds to keep the system running, especially education, especially health. These funds must be released on first line charge, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, but when you talk about the accountability, that is the major issue. You see, because if funds are released and these funds are spent, and there's no proper retirement, it becomes it then gives an opportunity for people to defraud Nigerians. If you read the Accountant General's or Auditor General's report, most times you discover that funds released to government agencies or departments, they don't always retire. They will tell you, oh, so and so billion was released for this contract was executed, they didn't tell us, the contractor, or even when they cross-check, discover that they don't even know the details about the contractor is not registered. The document that ought to have been submitted to show that the project was completed were not submitted, or the tell us that his men went to the field and discovered that job was not completed when the funds were released. Now, the agencies of government responsible must rise to the occasion. There's the Fiscal Responsibility Commission, which is supposed to monitor how some of these projects are executed. But then we discover that they are not well funded. And so because they are not funded, they don't do their jobs. Now, those who are giving these funds know that, look, the people who should supervise them don't have the resource to supervise them, so they can just play around. And unfortunately, even the National Assembly, which is supposed to have oversight function over the executive, we don't see them doing much. What we hear is, they started a probe, and then call one or two persons to the National Assembly. Some of them will come, some of them will not even honor the invitation, and then that will be the end of the story.
Okay,
so I think voting the funds is not actually the problem, but the accountability, proper retirement, the regulatory agencies doing their jobs is what we really need, so that these funds are not wasted.
All right, so considering the times that we're in, such difficult economic times in Nigeria, should we be expecting anything different? The president have made several promises and several remarks about how he understands the plight of Nigerians, how that he's going to hold his lieutenants accountable and all his cabinet members and so on. Should we expect anything different, given that the handwriting is written on the wall again, and nothing is different from the way and manner the issues of funds have been managed in the past, as we are seeing now as well?
Well, the unfortunate thing is that if you listen to the president's broadcast yesterday, I didn't hear much specific details. You know, some of the things he had said, I think we have heard over and over again. When we talk about giving targets to the ministers or those that are his lieutenant, we have heard this over and over and over again. We didn't hear anybody being removed from office because he did not meet target, because he didn't do his job. You know, and a whole lot of things that he talked about, social equality. We didn't know how he's going to ensure that. You know, you talk about social security, we don't know how he's going to ensure that. He talks about cultivating 500,000 acres of land. You know, we don't know how he's going to do that in the face of insecurity. You know, Zamfara State, Plateau State, Kaduna State, you know, Benue State, they are part of the food baskets of the country. The insecurity that we don't know how they will be tackled. Because we need to hear, oh, we're going to tackle insecurity in so and so way, we're going to secure so and so land to ensure that they are cultivated. All those details are not there. And then some of the things that to cushion the effect of the policy that has put in place, we've not even heard how you implement them. We're talking about, mass transit, vehicles. We are not hearing how government is implementing it. The CNG thing they talked about, we are not seeing them coming to pass. He talked about the national living wage. Well, he's talking about it. We have not seen, the process being put in place. He didn't even tell us when it will come into effect. So a whole lot of things are hanging without details, without timelines. You know, so we've been hearing this over and over again. And unfortunately, I don't think what he said, it gives us the confidence that things will change. And we are actually waiting, we are actually yearning for a change, because we have suffered so much, and we are suffering undeservedly because we have the resources, and the government agencies are paid whatsoever they need to be given in order to do their job. But these things are not being implemented.
So speaking about the promises that we're saying that it's been hanging, NLC came out to say that the federal government are not keeping up to the promises they made about the minimum wage, and saying that there's going to be another sit-in to talk about it in 2024. And the APC are coming out to defend the federal government. So there's a bit of back and forth. What is your take on that particular situation, and how does that give hope to Nigerians in general in what the federal governments are saying and promising?
Now, my own concern is that there's a whole lot of rhetoric. You know, people tend to argue, to dismiss the fears that Nigerians have. They just argue away things, but the reality is that Nigerians are suffering. Now, the president he didn't talk about minimum wage, he talks about living wage. Living wage is much more serious, is much more important than what we call minimum wage. When I talk about living wage, it means that I want to give people pay salaries that will be enough for people to survive on. That is, a cleaner, a security man should be able to say, okay, I collected this salary and it is enough for me to pay my house rent, for me to transport myself to the office, for me to feed, the 3 square meal, for me to cater for my health care. That's what a living wage is all about. And now, if it talks about a living wage, I want to see how that will happen. Now, the government is not even paying the minimum. Many state governments are not paying the minimum wage. Now, if you say a living wage in Nigeria today, no one should collect less than 200,000 for a living wage. Not less than 200,000. Because today, even, a bag of rice is about 50,000. Then the cost of transportation is there. The cost of rent, house rent is there. So we are looking forward to how government will bring about the living wage, not even the minimum wage. Because right now, sincerely, what we are suffering is beyond argument. It's beyond, tit for tat, or beyond, this, rhetoric by the government officials and the APC. Nigerians are suffering. That's the reality. It's not challenging PDP, challenging NLC,
Doctor,
and
it's
challenging
nearly
those who
time.
criticize
Of course,
government
we
that
have
really
to
matters.
put a stop to the show. Thank you so much, Dr. Theophilus Abba, the Program Director of Daily Trust Foundation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.